September 30th, 1863. Plans have changed somewhat. I have fallen in with some rough types, but it seems to be the only way to get to the West, where I can find my fortune and make my parents proud. I resolve never to do a dishonest act or take part in any thieving, robbing, or false undertaking. I will always keep to the straight and narrow, so help me God.
Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the show where two guys watch and review a movie thanks to the power of the random button and algorithms, and all hail the algorithm.
Magic.
And magic, too. With me, as always, is the Butch Cassidy to my Sundance Kid, Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. How's it going, Kyle?
If we free shot at the end, does that mean we don't die?
Yep, that's how it works. Thelma and Louise logic.
I'm doing all right. What did we watch this time?
We watched depressing Western number 1.
Bad Company.
If only.
I can't.
No, don't sing it. We'll get...
Oh, crap. Royalties.
We'll get taken down.
We did watch Bad Company from, 1966?
70.
72. 72,
sorry. Yeah.
1972, and I did read that it was what inspired Bad Company to take the name for their band. Apparently, they were somewhere and they had just recently watched the movie, and they're like, that sounds like a good band name.
It is.
And you know what it is? It is, and they even made the song Bad Company on the album Bad Company by Bad Company. So they really liked that name.
Founded by George Bad and Bill Company.
Yes. But before we get into all that, I'm going to go into what you watching.
I actually wrote all mine down this time.
What?
I know,
Is my OCD rubbing off on you, or did you just want to contribute?
I just wanted more to talk about.
Awesome. What do you got?
First, I watched Harper where Paul Newman plays Detective Lou Harper in based off the Ross MacDonald books. And it was a fun kind of neo-noir detective where it's just, if you just want to watch Paul Newman wandering around trying to solve a mystery while chewing gum the whole time, he's great. He's always cool. It's Paul Newman.
Well, I'd love to see that.
Then I watched Muppets Take Manhattan.
I love that movie.
Where the Muppets put on a Broadway show.
And it's the introduction of Rizzo the Rat.
Oh, yeah. A lot of great jokes. Classic Muppets.
A lot of great cameos like every other Muppet movie.
Oh, yeah. It's just magnificent.
My favorite being Gregory Hines in the park.
Yeah,
Give me back my roller skates.
That's great. I watched the documentary Crumb about the cartoonist Robert Crumb.
Okay. How was that one?
I liked it because a good documentary, you can tell where they have an interesting subject matter and it's told in an interesting way, and they did. They talked to him a lot. They talked to people he knows. He's just such a weird dude.
What has he... I know, like, I can picture, like, his drawing style, but I can't think of what he's done, though. Because I think I remember the movie coming out. What would he be most famous for?
He started a lot of the 1960s underground comics where he'd have a lot of sex, a lot of nudity in his comics. He started with Zap Comics, and then he's done a lot of shorter, weirder, stranger stuff.
Okay, I think I've heard of Zap.
Yeah.
So.
He has a character called Mr. B. Natural, who's like a guy who looks like he's naked all the time with a long beard.
Nice.
So yeah.
Interesting.
A lot of weird sexual stuff, but apparently people were big into that. Then I watched The Most Dangerous Game from 1932. And what's fun about that one is that the same producers worked on it as while they were also making another movie, King Kong. Nothing important there. So it even had some of the same cast members where like they would work on one movie during the day and then just go work on the other movie at night. And they even share some of the same sets. So the jungle set that's used in The Most Dangerous Game is the same as some of the jungle set in King Kong. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Then I watched Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which I know you also watched.
That one is on my What You Watching list, too.
So I guess we can both talk about it.
Yes. I had a lot of fun with this one.
I adored it, and just the timing was almost perfect for me, especially just the great use of slow-mo. And from what I understand, the stunt coordinator, the second unit director who did worked with just a lot of stunts, also worked on the John Wick movies, and you can definitely tell. And he was even like a stunt double for Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. So this guy, they got some good stuff on it.
Stahelski or something like that.
I forget his exact name, but yeah, he did some great work. And of course, it's also fun just to see women just being awesome and just enjoying themselves and beating the crap out of people. And a special shout out to Ewan McGregor as the villain Black Mask, who just played it just so weird. Like he's a bad guy, but then he doesn't really want to get his hands dirty all the time. So
it's just ew.
And he has like these, and like he kills someone because they have like a snot bubble running down.
Yes, is that a snot bubble? Yeah, Ewan McGregor looked like he was having the time of his life.
The whole cast was having a great time.
Yeah, and out of Suicide Squad, the best thing out of that movie was Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
I thought it was going to be Katana. This is Katana. She's got my back.
I think Margot Robbie is one of the greatest, like, of the new generation of actresses. I think she's really talented. And she's great in this role. Like, it was like she was born to play Harley Quinn.
And yeah, it's also nice that she had some more creative input on this one because she's also producer.
Okay, yeah. I thought the action was great too. I can't say that I didn't have any problems with it. The pausing for introducing every character, every bad guy, and really stop it, like it stopped the movie too much for me. It kind of had that feel of Suicide Squad where they would do that and put up all the stats of someone every time a new person came onto screen. And that kind of bothered me a little bit, but overall, I really had a fun time watching this movie. And I thought all the characters were great. And I think they could have had a little more character development with some of the other Birds of Prey since it was called Birds of Prey. And I know that they've now switched the title to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey instead of the long title.
I like the long title. I think it fits the film better and it fits the weirdness of the film better.
I understand it because
it's confusing.
It's a Harley Quinn movie, and when it was the long title, people just called it Birds of Prey. And so then it's confusing because then you go in, it's like, where are the Birds of Prey? But I agree with you. I liked the longer title better. It was fun. It was, just kind of rambling on, and that kind of feels like Harley Quinn's character. She just kind of goes off on tangents.
She goes off on tangents, but then remember, every once in a while, like, she does have a PhD, so yeah. She is smart.
So yeah, definitely worth a look.
Check it out. A lot of fun. Under 2 hours.
Yes. Do you have anything else, or was it your...
Oh, I've got more, son.
Awesome.
I've got 11 movies in total. Then I watched the documentary The Great Buster, which is a wonderful documentary about Buster Keaton, made by Peter Bogdanovich, who's a great filmmaker and also a great film historian in his own right. And he talked to everybody. He talked to people like Dick Van Dyke, people who actually knew Buster, but then he also talked to people like Johnny Knoxville, who made the Jackass movies, which kind of makes sense that you can see sort of a line of the kind of the stunt work that Keaton would do to the stuff that like they did in Jackass. So he talked to people I wouldn't think about. He even talked to people like Bill Hader. He talked to everybody for this film, and it's just so much fun because you forget just how big of an influence Keaton was. So.
Oh, that's really cool.
And then I watched The Shooting, which was an independent Western about two people stuck in the desert with Jack Nicholson.
Did you really watch The Shooting?
Yeah.
Because I just watched that today.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
So let's talk about The Shooting.
Okay. So my preface to this is a couple months ago, I started watching the Jack Nicholson filmography. I started at the very beginning. There's been some interesting films. And then I got to, in the early 60s, there's a lot of his films that I can't find streaming anywhere. I can't find on DVD Netflix. I can't find at the library. So I had to skip a bunch of them because I didn't want to buy it just because I'm going through the filmography. But the next one that was on my list was The Shooting. So I watched that today. And what did you think of this movie? It was really, it was interesting, but it was so weird.
Yeah, this is definitely a low-budget film because it's a very small cast. There's like 3 or 4 named characters, and then the woman who's just woman. She never gives her name. And then it's just like people trying to wander through the desert, but then it not really working and then falling apart.
It's like a revenge flick.
Without the revenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess she gets the revenge at the end.
But then she also dies. And, like, everyone dies except Jack Nicholson.
And the other guy didn't either. He was kind of just there on the rocks. And remember, he called out his friend's name? Cohen. Yeah, it was Jack Nicholson playing a killer for hire in the Old West, and the plot seemed really weird to me. That like they're going after this guy, but then they hire these other two to go with this woman hires these other two to go with them, and then Jack Nicholson is following them, and the plot doesn't actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it feels improvised and not in like a fun way. Because I know with something like Nashville, a lot of that plot had some improvisation with it. But Nashville still was able to kind of stitch together as sort of in a kaleidoscope sort of way. This film is much smaller than Nashville. Is that interesting artifact, I guess, a piece of sort of revisionist Western type stuff.
I think it did have a budget of probably about 20,000-30,000 because they couldn't actually get anybody to to produce this. So
yeah.
Jack Nicholson himself produced it, and this is when he was still working with Corman at the time, so he wasn't a huge name yet.
Yeah. Then I watched Animal Crackers, the Marx Brothers film.
Oh,
and in
great.
typical Marx Brothers goofiness, it's fun. I've seen this, I've seen Duck Soup, and I've seen A Night at the Opera. And my favorite part is always Harpo.
Yes, Harpo's the best.
Because he never talks, but he always has great faces, and when he plays music, he also does a lot of fun.
I got a Blu-ray set 2 Christmases ago, I think, of a bunch of several of their movies. They're bigger, most popular movies, and I got my daughter into that. She really liked them.
Yeah, they are really good at providing kind of different types of humor. There's the physical humor, and then there's sort of the one-liner humor that Groucho specializes, and then there's just kind of the facial humor that Harpo specializes in. Of course, there's some fun musical numbers too.
Yeah.
And then I watched Velocipaster.
I saw that's on Amazon Prime. I'm gonna watch it at some point.
It's definitely a movie that I've seen shown around in memes of just like the perfect movie doesn't exist, and then it just shows that. So apparently this was originally like a fake trailer made in 2011. Then the movie was made itself in 2018, and it is trashy in a trauma sort of way. Not quite to the point of something like Father's Day, but it's definitely in that same vein. Because it's a dumb movie and it knows it's dumb, and it just kind of has fun with itself about.
Is it dumb or is it fun dumb?
It's fun dumb. It's definitely something you'd want to watch with like if you could get like a rowdy screening of this, or maybe just with your friends and some drinks. It could.
I wish I would have went when they showed it at Late Shift at the Grindhouse. At a local theater.
Yeah, show it as like an indie theater or something weird or something goofy. It's fun. Don't be like me where you watch it on your phone at like 2 o'clock in the morning when you're at work. But But yeah, he's a pastor who becomes a dinosaur and fights crime and kills like pimps and gangbangers and ninjas.
So it's another pastor, so it would go well with Father's Day.
Sure. It is, yeah. Double feature, maybe.
There you go.
Then I watched Kansas City Confidential, which is a fun noir.
Yes.
Where what's fun about that one is because it's a heist movie, but the heist is over like the first 10 minutes. So then a guy who gets like put in prison for this heist, he's like, all right, let me out and I'll find the guys who really did this. So then it's more about him tracking down these guys to like a resort in Mexico and working, trying to clear his own name more than it is about the heist itself. It's pretty interesting. And then I watched The Return of the Pink Panther, which is the third in the Pink Panther series, starring Peter Sellers, directed by Blake Edwards.
I am a fan of that series.
Oh, they're just downright silly. And this one was fun because it had Christopher Plummer filling in for the role that David Niven played in the first one. And this is really one kind of like, they have the ongoing storyline of the chief inspector who's going crazy.
Yeah. Played
by Herbert Lom, which is just so much fun. He's just slowly getting crazy and just wants to kill Clouseau. It just gets nuttier and nuttier. And yeah, just Peter Sellers being Peter Sellers, and every once in a while his buddy Kato shows up and they have a goofy slapstick fight.
Yeah, those are all great movies, so
yes.
A lot of fun.
That's all 11 of mine. All
right. So you knocked off a couple of mine. I watched, You watched a bunch of classics and some interesting documentaries.
And Velocipaster.
And Velocipaster. At least you got some trash in there.
Yes.
I watched a lot of newer stuff. I watched a movie called Bodied. It's produced by Eminem and the producers of 8 Mile and stuff. It was really interesting. It's this skinny white boy who wants to do his like college thesis on the culture of rap battles.
Okay.
So he's going to these rap battles and he's talking to them and then talking about like the use of language and everything in there. And then they get out to the parking lot and he likes to do beat poetry. His character does. So then he goes and they're like, another white guy comes in and starts battling and then it becomes those two. And all of a sudden you realize that him doing beat poetry, like he's constantly thinking of rhymes in his head and all this stuff. And so he rap battles this other guy in the parking lot and they're like, holy crap, he's really good. And so then it progresses with him getting into these different rap battles, and it's comedy and drama. So like there's some funny stuff in here, but it also deals a lot with like the language in rap battles and then talking about like the N-word and stuff like that. And when you use this, how it's used in the culture and everything. And as a lot to say about like that kind of stuff, but then I'm not sure what it was exactly trying to get across with that, because by the end, he went full bore at the end and just destroyed everyone and went full on just offensive and as can be in the rap battles. But he's like, it's a rap battle. This is what you do in them. So, it was a really interesting movie, and the kid was really good at like spitting out the rhymes. So it was a fun movie to watch.
Neat. I'm not very well versed in rap and hip hop, but I do enjoy like learning about it, because it is a skill, and it definitely is a talent that not a lot of people have. And
yeah,
when you're good, I can tell the difference between when someone's good and someone's bad for the most part. And if you get a chance, I definitely look up the comic Hip Hop Family Tree, and it's a comic that also does a really good job at tracing the history of hip hop and kind of where it started initially through like in 1960s and 70s in Brooklyn, I believe, and just how it's kind of more interesting being progressed and became a global phenomenon. And what's also nice is that in the back of each volume of this comic, it lists songs as well as the different like musical beats and breaks and parts of music that they would use.
Huh. Yeah, that would be interesting, because I enjoy some old school rap, some of the 90s stuff like that, and I do like good freestyle. If someone's really good at it, it is so interesting to see them come up with this stuff off the top of their head, because I think there is a method to coming up with freestyle stuff. So, and I mean, I don't know how you unlock that method, but the people who can, it's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun too.
And I realize this is a movie, so none of that was actually freestyle, but
maybe it was.
Some of it could have been, because a lot of the people in the rap battles, they actually used actual rappers and freestylers. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
I also watched X-Men Dark Phoenix because I've seen all the X-Men movie, and I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. It sucks.
Can't believe they messed it up. They messed that story up twice.
I know. It's just so bad.
The big difference was then the writer of X-Men Last Stand became the director?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, because Simon Kinberg did this, didn't he?
Yeah, Simon Kinberg instead of Bryan Singer, because Bryan Singer is terrible and a rapist.
Yeah. But anyway, the interesting thing about this is I think that the train sequence at the end was a reshoot, and that was the best part of the movie because that had some great action in it. It was a fun fight scene at the end.
I did hear where there were some reshoots.
So anyway, moving on. I rewatched Inception, and that holds up. I still love that movie.
I think Inception on its own I haven't seen it in a long time. Like my dad was watching it the other day. It's like kind of stuck in for bits and pieces. It's well made, but I dislike it. I dislike how it affected the soundtrack, how it made Hans Zimmer go into his full blah phase.
Yes, now you can tell a Hans Zimmer score because there's always a blah in there.
And I don't like the blahs as much as I more enjoyed like the definitely more playful like Pirates of the Caribbean Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
Because the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack is still pretty great.
I can see that. The thing is when it came out and that trailer came out with that Hans Zimmer score, it was amazing at the time because it was something new, and then he just kind of kept reusing it. So, yeah, it brought it about, but like a lot of good things bring about a whole slew of bad imitators, even from themselves, like Hans Zimmer's imitating himself all the time.
Yeah.
At the time, it was pretty awesome, and the movie still holds up, and I love that it is so complicated, yet you can still follow it.
Because it's, if anything, it's just a super fancy heist movie.
It really is. And so, like, everything makes sense time-wise, and dream within a dream within a dream, and you can tell what's going on through all of that. So it's amazing that Christopher Nolan was able to pull something like that off, and I cannot wait to see Tenet, to see what he does with this.
Yeah, he definitely cashed in all of his goodwill, all of his chips from The Dark Knight, and just kind of went nuts, and lucky for him it pulled off.
Yeah. So I watched the new Child's Play because Mark Hamill is Chucky, and I'm sorry, but I was watching this going, the old Chucky doll, Buddy is what it's called, in the first movie, yeah, sure, he had messy hair, but it was a doll you could see your kid owning. This doll looks like a miniature serial killer to begin with. I'm going, no one would get the possessed doll because no one would buy this freaking thing. It is so creepy looking.
Isn't it also, don't they do like a weird like Alexa or Siri gone crazy sort of thing with it?
Yeah, and that was one of my problems with the movie, is that they didn't go far enough with that. It was at the end, they used it where he's in a store and turning off and on all these things and attacking people with drones. I'm going, why weren't you doing that the whole movie? Like, and they had it because it's like, the kid and his mom, played by Aubrey Plaza, they're in a small apartment. They can't really afford like the nice electronics. So like she couldn't even afford this, but she took it off the back of a truck at a toy store. So they don't have any electronics for it to control. But I'm going, that kind of takes away what you're trying to update with this.
Yeah, I guess if they did kind of, you start playing with that more and more, and then realize interconnectivity helps. And as I guess if it could build more to up to a progression of all, then like the crazy stuff, or like imagine if they got like towards the end they get like a self-driving car or something really crazy at the
so
that could be fun. So yeah, an okay idea. But what's also weird is that the original Chucky series is still ongoing with the original creators. Basically, like I think that's when they got to like, what was it, Bride of Chucky or whatever. It's then they realized that like
it's just campy.
MGM still has the rights to like the Child's Play name, but then the Chucky character like he can still use with Brad Dourif. It's another one of those weird rights issues things. It goes back to like the Captain Marvel.
You know what's funny is you mentioned self-driving cars. He does actually control one of those in the movie, and with an old lady in the car and just like zip it around the parking lot and like wreck the car.
Does she explode?
No.
Then I'm not interested.
I watched I Lost My Body because as we're recording this, the Oscars just happened a few days ago, and so I had watched a couple more Oscar contenders before that, and I saw I Lost My Body on Netflix. It's a weird French cartoon. It's just weird. There's a guy who is stalking this girl and gets a job with her uncle or her grandfather or something. And then this whole time it's interlaced with this hand that's escaped from a lab and is making its way across the city.
Making my way downtown, walking.
And getting into all sorts of things. Like it runs into some rats in the subway. It runs into a pigeon up on a rooftop. It jumps down with an umbrella. Like this hand is trying to go through this whole city and is on its own adventure, which was actually, there were some really tense scenes in there, and kind of I was watching going, I don't even know if this is really a kids movie, and maybe it's not supposed to be, but I was like, I don't know, it was just really bizarre and weird to explain.
Yeah, I like European, more modern European animated stuff. They're willing to do weirder things because they're not dominated by like Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, and Illumination. So their stuff is willing to look weird and different and crazy. Like, we watched April in the Extraordinary World, which had a very specific look, and I thought was and we both enjoyed it, if I remember correctly.
Which one?
April in the Extraordinary World.
Yes. Yeah, I remember really enjoying that one.
And then another French animated film I like is called Phantom Boy. And I haven't
seen that one yet.
That one's really good. It got a nice, I've seen it subbed, I haven't seen the dub, but subbed was fun because it's like a crime thriller, but then also has some good jokes in it. Like there's just this, like there's like a dog, like a small dog, not like a pug, but just this tiny grumpy dog that just has this very angry face the whole time. And even when you can hear it, like even if like you don't see it, you just hear it walking on like tile, and you just hear click 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 from its claws.
Nice.
Then like when you do look at it, it just kind of stares at you.
Okay. I've got just a couple more. I'll go through these quick because I realize we're taking a lot of time on this. I watched The Two Popes. It's My Dinner with Andre at the Vatican.
Two Popes, Two Furious.
Two Popes, Two Furious.
It's about family.
It's actually good. I thought Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce were both excellent in it. It really is just two popes talking, and then it's interlaced with kind of flashback to Jonathan Pryce's younger self.
Yeah, Pope Francis or whatever, de Bergoglio.
Yeah. It was interesting just to hear the dichotomy between Pope Benedict and his wanting to keep everything very traditional in the church, and Pope Francis wanting to be more getting with the times and not falling behind the times and being more modern. And I like Pope Francis. I remember when he became Pope, and I was like, oh, this guy's cool. I was like, we actually have a cool Pope now.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting time, and I'm glad this movie was made just because it is such a bizarre situation where there's two popes living at the same time, which, doesn't happen normally.
Usually it's when someone dies. And
then there was that one time where there was like three popes at the same time because there was a schism, and I don't know. History is weird. Yeah.
But it is worth a look, and it's on Netflix, so I mean, very well acted and very, like I said, interesting between the two, just their viewpoints, and then how they were kind of butting heads at first, and how they gradually became friends. It was very interesting.
I really like the sequence at the end where they're just like watching the World Cup soccer.
Yeah, and then the credits come on, and they're just sitting there watching it.
And they're just like hanging out.
Yeah. I watched a movie called The Wind. Came out in 2018. It's about some people.
Is it less about the happening? Is it like the happening with the wind?
It might be because it's two people in this cabin in the Old West, and like there's no one around for miles, and a new neighbor moves into like a house like half a mile away.
it's the old lady.
And it's just constant. It's just constant wind on the prairie, and it finally drives the woman nuts, and she thinks there's a demon, and then there really is a demon, and blah. It was moving on.
But does it have old-timey sea Captain Willem Dafoe?
No, it does not. It should have.
Did it have Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel?
What is that? I've never seen The Happening, but what is that line that Mark Wahlberg always, like, they always showed in like memes and stuff, where he's like looking out his apartment at the old lady, and what does he say there?
The old lady's like, "You're probably gonna come and kill me and rob my things." He goes, "What? No!" Just the flattest space. But that movie is it is something special.
I need to actually watch this sometime because it looks stupid.
It is a great crowd movie with the crowd. It could fall in this same sort of feeling as like The Room, and just because it's just the acting is just, the choices they make are just interesting to say the least.
The last one I watched was on Amazon Prime, Honey Boy. It's basically Shia LaBeouf having a cathartic moment.
Sometimes you got to work things out, bro.
Yeah. So, and the thing is I saw a clip of him on Ellen, and he was talking about this movie, and it's about him going to like this place where he's got, they diagnosed him with PTSD, and I think it's from his childhood. And then he also talks about like, so it goes between that
and Even Stevens,
and him being in Even Stevens. They didn't name the show, but it's like, oh, child actor and his dad living in a motel. And this is actually what happened. Is so, I mean, it's basically him telling the story of his early life when he started on Even Stevens, and then him, and he said he wrote it in like 2 months, and it was actually last year that he was in that place. So so that's when he had this idea to like do this movie, and he wrote it in like 2 months and then released it the same year he was in the place he wrote the movie about. So it was very interesting to see what kind of life he led as a child actor with his dad. And it was really interesting. And you could tell he was like you said, getting something out there. Just, I think he was just kind of putting it out there and having his little moment.
I like Shia LaBeouf. I think he's had an interesting career, and I know he'll probably make his big comeback here sooner rather than later. And
he had Peanut Butter Falcon last year.
I've heard Peanut Butter Falcon was very good. I was not able to see it. But I'd like to see him do, like, I don't know, something a bit more mainstream, because I feel like he's very charismatic. It'd be fun just to see him like as just like a goofy rom-com lead. Because what I also like him is that he's one of those people who just kind of looks like a regular person. He's not he's not insanely beautiful. He's not like The Rock, where he's huge. He's not like Jason Momoa, where he's huge. But or like George Clooney, who has like cheekbones, who could like cut glass or whatever.
He's very weird in real life, and I think he's got a lot of issues, and like he's done some stupid things, but I think he's a really good actor. And you know, like you said, I like the first Transformers. I think he's good in it. I love Fury, and I love every actor in that movie. Like, that is so great, and he did great in the role. The thing is he got all weird on everybody and broke his own tooth for, like, you know, to be method. I'm going, dude, you do know that a chipped tooth doesn't grow back, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he's a little crazy, but he's a really good actor.
I also like to imagine that Tom Hanks stayed in character the whole time they were shooting The Good Neighbor. He just is Mr. Rogers, but
he is Mr. Rogers.
Anyway, like that's Man on the Moon, Jim and Andy sort of thing.
That is what I've watched, and I realize we've gone long, so what I'm going to do is, since we put this on YouTube, I'm going to start putting a time code for What-U-Watchin', and then our main feature, and then the double feature.
Makes sense.
So that, you know, if anybody finds our podcast and go, oh god, they drone on and on about movies ahead of time, I just want to get to the main feature, or vice versa.
Jump.
I'll start putting time codes for those three main points in our podcast.
That's a good idea. Oh, now we have to talk about Bad Company.
We do. Let's talk about the director and actor and all that stuff first. First of all, got to get Rotten Tomatoes, 92%, 12 critics, 71% with 2,000 users. This movie was shot in the Flint Hills of eastern Kansas. I saw that in the trivia.
Makes sense.
It was directed by Robert Benton, and this was his feature debut. And I don't know if you looked up what else this guy's done.
What else has he done?
He went on to win an Oscar for Best Director for Kramer vs. Kramer.
Huh.
And he also directed Nobody's Fool and Twilight with Paul Newman.
Twilight, the classic 2008 film.
No. Not the sparkly vampire movie. He wrote Bonnie and Clyde, which I had to watch for, like, I think every one of my film classes in college.
Nice.
So I've seen that movie like 20 times. He wrote and directed Bad Company. He helped write the screenplay for Superman.
Cool.
And he wrote Kramer vs. Kramer, Nobody's Fool, and Twilight, which he all directed. So he went on to, this is his feature debut, and then he went on to win an Oscar for Best Director. So
yeah, Superman the movie though is almost reminds me a bit of like Gone with the Wind, in the sense that it just went through so much production with tons of people touching it.
Yeah. Like
even like Mario Puzo worked on the screenplay for Superman the movie.
Yeah. And that's probably how Marlon Brando got the role.
I assume, no.
He also co-wrote this movie, Bad Company, with a guy named David Newman, who also co-wrote Bonnie and Clyde with him. And then he also worked on the screenplay for Superman 1, but also Superman 2 and 3.
David Newman?
Yes. And then he also worked on the screenplay for Santa Claus, the movie.
But he did not work on the screenplay for
Quest for Peace.
For Peace? That's well, at least he helped with the evil Clark versus good Clark sort of thing.
And another person of note is, I looked up the cinematographer, and his name is Gordon Willis. And another tie to Mario Puzo, he was the cinematographer for Godfather 1, 2, and 3.
Huh.
And for All the President's Men.
Huh.
And for Annie Hall. And for the Tom Hanks classic, The Money Pit.
So this guy was all over the 70s.
He was. So he's got a good set of movies that he's done cinematography for.
Yeah.
I didn't notice anything special with this movie, but it wasn't bad cinematography.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like it wasn't like Robbie Mueller in Paris, Texas or something, which is gorgeous.
Because when was Godfather?
72.
So that would have been the same time as this.
Yeah. I think he put his effort into Godfather.
Yeah, and he's like, on the weekends I'll come shoot this one. And another thing to note is Jeff Bridges. Well, Jeff Bridges is in this, and he's a young Jeff Bridges. And then there's a gang leader by the name of Big Joe, played by David Huddleston. And 26 years later, Jeff Bridges and David Huddleston would both play the two Lebowskis in The Big Lebowski.
Huh, that's really funny.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
So that's just a little background on this.
It's all connected.
The two leads are Jeff Bridges and Barry Brown. Barry Brown is actually the lead. He was in a bunch of stuff, nothing I know.
Yeah, it's kind of, so, Jeff Bridges is the one that stuck around.
Yeah, so it was fun to watch him as a young actor in this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and he sounds exactly the same.
He does. He's a little more, like, nowadays, sometimes you can't understand what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch The Seventh Son?
I did not watch The Seventh Son. Because
that's one where you really cannot understand him at all. You need Jeff Bridges subtitles.
Yeah, Dr. Subtitles.
So, this movie, we start out with Drew Dixon. And this is... I didn't see... They didn't put up a year or anything, but I'm assuming this is Civil War time.
Yeah, 1863 is supposed 1862, 63. So during the Civil War, and our intro is like Union soldiers going like house to house trying to find people that were trying to dodge the draft.
Yeah. And he's one of them. And he gets the hell out of town. And then he goes to another town, and he's going to try and get on the train and
make his way west.
And he sees two guys from the military standing by the line, and so he's like, "Oh crap, I can't do this." And then he goes and he gets mugged by Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, because Jeff Bridges goes and sweet talks. Oh, what are you doing here? He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to get on the train." Well, you got to wait about 6 months or whatever. He's like, yeah. What about the wagon train? Oh, that's even worse. So he's just trying. He's sweet talking him. He's like, "Oh, well," and Drew Dixon is this very stiff, comes from like a rich family. He knows
very goody two shoes.
Very goody two shoes, well cultured. He's like, "Oh, do you know where a Methodist church is?" And everybody's like, "Oh, I'd be happy to take you to this Methodist church." Takes him down an alley, hits him, and takes his money. Yeah,
and he did not get to. And there's an ongoing thing with the story of when he left his mom's house, she gave him $100, and he put that in his boot. So that did not get stolen by Jeff Bridges, and so that's in his boot through the whole movie. And we get a montage of a bunch of people mugging different people.
Chekhov's boot,
yes.
So it's Jeff Bridges and friends are like a gang of ice, like Artful Dodger and
yeah, they're
in
just
a Dickensian sort of way.
They're a group of troublemakers
around the same time period, actually. So
that don't want to.
They don't want to go to war.
They don't want to go to war. They also don't want to go to work, so they're trying to go out west to avoid everything. But in order to get there, they're stealing money from people instead of getting jobs. So
as you do.
Yeah. So, and then once Drew gets bonked on the head, then some lady helps him out, and it turns out to be the same lady that one of the other guys stole the purse of. And then they're going to run a scheme of Jeff Bridges will take the purse back and ask for a reward. And then he runs into Drew there. And then they get in a fight in the kitchen. That's great. Drew throws his boot in the soup in the kitchen, and then they just destroy the kitchen in this fight. And they're like, oh, crap. And they both run away. And he's like, well, now you just ran away from that crime scene, so you're on the run too. Might as well join me. So he goes back and joins the joins the gang. We got like 2 twins.
Yeah, something and Joe Bob.
Yeah.
Boog's the little kids.
And then Boog.
Boog and Sims.
And Boog's a drinker.
Boog's a drinker and he's also like 12.
Yeah. No, he's 10.
Oh, he's 10. So.
When someone says he's like 9, he's like, I'm 10.
Nice.
Something like that. Yeah, when we meet... No, is that when we meet them? It's... Yeah, when he meets the rest of the gang...
This gang of misfits.
He comes back and they're all trying to tie cans to a cat. Just like...
They're just a bunch of weirdos. Just like young boys with nothing to do. So they get into trouble.
Yeah, and they don't trust this new guy, so they're like, oh, if he's really, good, he's going to go steal for us and prove that he's okay by us. And so he's
go rob that hardware store.
Yeah, so he goes to rob a hardware store, and on the way back, he punches a wall to hurt his hand and comes back and he just takes $12 out of his boot.
Yeah, it's like he rips his shirt and his outfit a little bit to make it look like he
got in a fight with a big guy.
A fight with someone, and then no, in reality, he just took money out of his boot.
And so then he gets in with it, and he gives him $12. He gets in good with them. They have a frog fight at dinner,
As you do.
And just putting frogs... And it was kind of funny because they're trying to put frogs down shirts, and then it goes down someone's pants, and someone kicks him in the pants and kills the frog in his underdrawers there. And then... they head off west the next day.
And they get some horses and a mule.
And then we just have like a series of events.
Yeah, then the movie kind of becomes episodic in the way that road movies can.
And kind of like Nicholas Nickleby from a couple
And Nicholas Nickleby,
ago. Yeah, there's at some point Drew's reading a story. There is one point where they're all lining up to shoot a rabbit and just like waste like 85 bullets.
Yeah, there's
and
a lot
finally someone hits it.
Also, did they actually kill that rabbit? Because they showed a real rabbit getting shot.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if they did.
Were animals harmed in the making of this film?
Oh,
is it like Heaven's Gate, where one time, like during a battle scene in Heaven's Gate, while they were filming, a horse explodes?
I don't know. I don't know if I can like this movie anymore. When they're eating the rabbit. Well, I wonder if they ate the actual rabbit then. If they killed it and they ate it on set, then, then it's hunting for food. It's
Still.
Like, my dad's a deer hunter, He hunts the deer and then he eats all the meat.
Then the deer hunt him.
And then the deer hunt him and then a horror movie ensues.
No, then it's the SNL Bambi live action remake with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
I thought it was going to be the deer in the back of the car on Tommy Boy. Oh, it's not dead. Ah!
I remember there was a video game where you played a deer who went around hunting people.
I have a game that I downloaded on the PlayStation called Goat Simulator, where you just run around and bash things with a goat.
Because
But anyway, off topic.
Goat Simulator's great. It plays like Tony Hawk. And that's the joke.
There's that night while they're eating the rabbit, Drew's telling a story, and then it gets interrupted because Boog starts telling the story of his father.
Not any particular story. They're reading Jane Eyre.
Oh yes, they're reading Jane Eyre, and I don't know the Jane Eyre story. I haven't watched the movie. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if it pertains to anything in this movie or if it just happens to be something they're reading.
I think it's just a book because it shows that Drew is a man of culture that he can read.
Yeah. So then Boog interrupts them because they're talking about like the fancy house, everything. He's like, "Oh, we used to have a parlor and all this," and then he started talking about his dad and how he had a scheme where they owned a slave, and they would sell the slave to a farmhouse, and then in the night they would steal the slave back and go to the next town and sell him again, and just kept doing that until finally the slave got sick of it and killed his dad.
Yeah,
for good reason. Why for good reason, and that's why he's on his Boog is on his own. And that's the only backstory we really get. I don't know if we get the other guys' backstories.
Yeah,
they run into a couple that tell them not to go west, but then they're like, "Well, you want for $8? All of you can have sex with my wife here." So,
well, how do we know she's actually a woman? So then,
do you have any diseases?
Like, no. And
then you got Jeff Bridges going down there with her, and he gets her first, and it's like
He comes
15 seconds, he goes, and everyone's like, "You're done already?" He goes, "Yeah, she'll never forget that."
Yeah, so that was a good joke.
So they run into someone who...
But then Drew refuses to do it because he's principled. He has his own convictions because he's a good boy.
You have a lot of that all through the movie, is like how, him going to rob a hardware store, he didn't actually rob it. He just told the story that he did. He wouldn't have sex with the woman because it's premarital sex. Then they get robbed in the night, and they lost all their food and $2.14. But I wrote down that Jake saved the watch. Jake must have been one of the... Oh, Jake is Jeff Bridges' character.
Yeah, Jake saved the watch because Drew gave it to him overnight so he could keep time. Yeah,
there's a watch that he got. His brother died in the war, and that's all that he has left to remember him by. Then they get to a point where they're going to go rob a stagecoach, and they're all hiding in the bushes. And
before that, they see like a farmhouse, and they go trade a gun for food from this farmer. It's like, I bet we could take him. It's like, no, we can't say him. You shouldn't say that right when we're outside his house.
And this is where you get like Jake, played by Jeff Bridges, he's kind of just a jerk.
He's kind of a jerk full of himself. He thinks of himself as like this great cowboy hero when he's really just a kid.
Yeah. Because here, he's like, they trade the gun for some food, and he's just ungrateful about it. They're having dinner, and he's complaining about the dinner. And then the guy pulls the gun on him, is like, well, then get out of here. And he's like, oh, I'm going to finish my food. It's like, well, then shut up, dude. It's like, he's kind of, he really is a jerk in this movie.
Yeah, his sort of hubris or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you start to see the seams of this whole operation.
Yeah, because slowly, then you get to the point where his gang just starts getting sick of him, because the next day they go to rob a stagecoach.
And they're all right, well, planet ahead this time. And they have one of the boys, Sim. All right, Sims, you go up there and you try and get him to stop, and then we'll ambush him.
Yeah.
So then Sims goes up there, gets him to stop. And
they're just watching.
And then he just gets on the stagecoach and leaves with it.
And, he has the right idea, because they're probably like, we're going west too. Come along. He's like, okay. So then Sims is done in this movie.
And he's just gone. It's like, what? He left. Sims! How could you?
And then we go and... They go and steal some chickens, and this is the part where it like gets violent, because then
there's a pie on the shelf.
Boog goes to the classic pie on the windowsill to cool off, and Boog goes to steal it and
grabs the pie
and gets shot in the head.
Gets shot in the head and dies, and then the pigs get the pie. So they were able to get away with it. Didn't even get away with any chickens, and that's when the two brothers get mad at Jake and Drew. So they take their horses and kind of leave them with nothing but the mule.
They've got guns, so they start a rock fight.
Yep.
Yeah, that was their kind of last straw was, dude, Boog died because we're sitting here robbing places and it's dangerous. And
it's all your fault.
And, we live in the Old West where everyone owns a gun. So.
Or is that just Texas? Or it could be Kansas. I don't know. I've never been to Kansas.
Yeah, I don't know. It was filmed in Kansas.
Yeah, it's definitely just Kansas.
Who knows? They're on their way west, so, I mean, whatever that means. They mentioned where a city they were going to, but I don't remember what the city was, so
yeah.
That doesn't help me any. Yeah, so the twins mutiny, and they steal the horse. They stole Drew's watch, and then...
they go around...
This was another thing where those first chickens they're trying to steal, I don't think that... Drew participated.
Yeah.
And then they go to steal more chickens, and Drew's like, well, Drew got shot in the arm on the last one because he was down there.
Yeah.
So he's like, they go to steal more chickens. He's like, oh, I can't do this because my arm, I'll just slow you down or I'll trip and I'll scream about my arm. And so like he got out of stealing more chickens again.
Jake steals a chicken, and then they get in a fight of who gets to eat the chicken. Because Jake says like, oh, I did all the risk. I should eat the chicken.
Yeah. And... yeah, so they have a fight that night, and then the next day they actually find the twins hung from a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't make it anywhere. And
then they try and take their stuff and see if they still have the watch.
Yeah, they get the watch, and then they run into the gang that robbed them before. And this is a gang that's run by David Huddleston, the big Lebowski. The big Lebowski. I'm a Lebowski, you're a Lebowski. I'm the dude, man.
You're Mr. Lebowski. Dude, was it? You just go get there. You dang hippie.
So the funny thing is, it's
he's
like
not actually.
He's just.
I've seen Spinals before, and this guy. No, we're just gonna think about the Big Lebowski instead.
This big guy. He's like a bigger guy, and he's the leader of this gang. He doesn't actually do anything, and he just calls his like henchmen imbeciles.
He calls the shots.
He calls the shots, and he's like, "Oh, these guys are idiots."
So then they try and go rob Jake and Drew without him, and he's just like sitting there eating like his beans.
Yeah. And then they get into a gunfight down there, and they're like 10 feet from each other, and everybody's missing everybody.
Yeah, none of them are professionals. This is not a Sergio Leone film, that's for sure.
But I like how they only ended up hitting one person, even though they're just sitting there firing from like 5 feet away.
Yeah.
And then they chase him down. They're running through the woods and stuff. And actually, one of them got skimmed, and he's sitting behind a tree, and he's like, "Oh crap, I'm hitting. Well, I'm gonna get that guy." And then I don't remember. I think it was Drew runs past the tree and shoots him a couple of times before he can shoot him. And it was one of my favorite lines of the movie because the guy gets shot and he goes, "I'm dead. The little runt got me." I was like, really? You're going to yell out, "I'm dead"? It was just such a weird line. The way he delivered the line is like, "I'm dead. Little runt got me." And then he falls over dead.
Good to know.
So they eventually got him all.
So they win barely. This is a very messy gunfight. This is not like a big action scene. It's kind of messy. It's gross. It's not glorified in any sort of way. It's not cool.
And this is the part where Drew is looking for his watch because these guys still. Oh, he didn't get the watch off of the two guys because these guys had it.
Yeah.
And so he's getting the watch off of a guy, and while he's on the ground doing that, there's a hole in his boot, and Jake sees the money in there. So finally he confronts him about that and knocks him out and steals the money. Again. So he knocks him out a second time, and then
takes the mule, so then Drew is stuck on his own.
Yeah, and then Drew finds a horse and eventually catches up with him. They have a big fight.
But before that, he ends up joining a posse with the marshal.
Oh, that's true.
Because he looks like he comes across like a house that's burning.
The barn is burning out there.
Barn that's burning up out. So then he finds out these two guys are arrested. He ends up helping a marshal. Then he decides he wants to join up with them, be a lawman. And then eventually he finds Jake after they kill a gang. So
yeah, because Jake actually joined the gang that robbed them earlier.
Yeah.
So then he's hunting down Jake and the gang with the marshal. And then they have like a big shootout in the house. So you got the classic shootout where just a million bullet holes in the wall and the gang is all running out and getting shot. And they're all going to be hung the next day, including Jake, because he was part of the gang. And Drew tries to convince the marshal, "Oh, no, he's not really like this." I'm going, dude, he's knocked you out twice. And he was
taking your money twice.
He was a terrible leader. He took your money twice.
Wouldn't even share his chicken.
But Jake wins him over by showing him that he kept the watch for him and he didn't let that get stolen again. And so Drew goes, "Oh gosh, I'm such a nice guy that I'm going to help this guy escape." So he helps Jake escape. And then Jake tries to leave again in the morning. and Drew's like, "You know what? I'm sticking with you until I get my $85 back that you've stolen." And then we go to...
So they finally make it to another town, and they decide to rob a place.
Yeah, so then it's like, okay, then all of a sudden Drew breaks bad at the very end of the movie. And it just kind of ends with that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it doesn't really end. It just kind of stops.
Yeah.
It's like they just ran out of movie.
They said, "This is a stick-up." And you're going, but wait a minute, what? So now I guess they're Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I assume he then became One-Eyed Bart, just like Mr. Potato Head in Toy Story.
So, overall, what did you think? I kind of second that sentiment because
the movie's even kind of ugly to look at. You can make the prairie look good, even in winter.
It was very drab.
It was very brown.
Yeah.
The main color was brown, which seems like some 70s film had that problem, and not just because brown paneling was everywhere.
Yeah.
It was brown and gross and dusty.
And as much as there was some fun with the characters, it wasn't enough for you really care. And also, Jeff Bridges' character was such an ass. I'm like, the whole time I'm going...
It was kind of hard to empathize with him.
Yeah, and I think you're supposed to empathize with Drew, actually. But then at the very end, they have him breaking bad after he's this good kid the whole time. Is it just like them saying, eventually you go bad because it's the Wild West and you got to make your own way? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's hard out here for a pimp.
I assume so.
Yeah, and there's too much in between where they're just sitting and eating or this and that. Like, there are a lot of scenes that just kind of drag in between the action. I don't want to call them action scenes, but like, you know, scenes where they're just sitting around, kind of slow down the movie a little bit. It was good to see Jeff Bridges, a young Jeff Bridges, see where he's getting his start, because this is one of his first movies, I think.
Yep.
But overall, it was fine, but it was kind of drab.
Yeah, soundtrack was okay. They stuck with mostly piano, like The Sting, except The Sting was, I think, a much better made movie. Had a definitely more plot heavy, since it definitely is more of a heist movie.
Yeah.
Than this one.
Yeah. I love The Sting.
Sting is great.
So this one is not.
Yeah.
This is from an Academy Award winning director, but this is his debut. For a debut, again, like, we've had a lot of debuts on our podcast, and most of them have been okay. You can see where it's like, okay, we'll give this guy another shot, because it's not a bad movie. It's just, like you said, it's kind of, I can't believe this cinematographer went on to do The Three Godfathers and what did I say? The Three Godfathers and All the President's Men and Annie Hall and The Money Pit. I'm like, he must have got a lot better, because this is, like you said, very brown. Nothing very exciting in it. And
it might have been during, like, I don't know, budgetary constraints, or maybe he was just busy with it working on The Godfather, which
that could
looks
be
great.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know if I can give this a high recommend. It's short.
Yeah,
it's on,
but it doesn't even feel that short. It felt like it kind of drag in sections.
Yeah,
the editing could have been tighter. Long sections of them almost doing things or talking about doing things.
And if you're gonna have something where you're following bad people, I know that Drew was the good one, but then eventually, like, he's bad at the end. So, like, I don't know. If you're gonna have something following bad people, you got to make it more fun and make it pop and have the characters likable, even though they're bad. Like Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Either that, or even if you try to do, like, sort of man on the run type movies from kind of in an older period piece, I think another point of comparison would be something like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because that movie's fun, and those characters are very memorable. You got Tim Blake Nelson, George Clooney, and then John Turturro.
Yeah. Yes. So that's it. I need to revisit that one, and I think that I might revisit it soon, because I'm just finishing up The Odyssey, which I've never read before. So it'll be interesting to go back and rewatch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou after listening to the audiobook of The Odyssey.
Also, it has a Grammy-winning soundtrack.
Yes, and I love Man of Constant Sorrow.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Great movie.
See, and that's even one thing that I remember from the movie. I'm going, oh, okay, that's even a reference to the book, because he's always talking about how he's a man full of sorrow in the book.
Yep.
You know, he's a man of many sorrows. So, it'll be fun to go back, because I enjoyed the movie just because it was so much fun, but I didn't know the story of Odysseus. And now that I'm doing the audiobook of The Odyssey, I'm going, oh, that'll be fun to revisit that with after having read The Odyssey, which is based on. So,
yeah, I like The Odyssey, and I actually talked about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in a class. It was all about just, like, weird adaptations that don't quite fit. Because, you know, there's a straight adaptation of something like a book to a movie.
Yeah.
But then there's the weirder adaptations where it's something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which took the basic premise of a book and then just kind of took it in a completely different direction. Instead of making, like, comic strip characters, they took it more, like, into Golden Age, Warner Brothers, and Disney cartoons.
So kind of like The Lion King is Hamlet?
Maybe.
Well, anyway, should we go on to our double feature for this?
Yeah, let's move on to our The next segment, which is probably one of my favorite segments of what would make a good double feature, or if it's a good movie, or what you could watch instead if it's a not so good movie. For me, I'm leaning toward watch something else instead, but that's just me.
I kind of am too. You're not gonna hate yourself for watching Bad Company, and if you want to watch Early Bridges, but I don't know if it's worth the time. So mine might be an instead also.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to go first on this one? Or?
Yeah, I'll go first. I was thinking, this falls into revisionist westerns, which is really kicked off by the spaghetti western eras by Sergio Leone, especially when he made Once Upon a Time in the West in the late 60s. So this is probably
my favorite western.
Coming from the same stock, as that movie is kind of gross and ugly, but it's still great. It's still very good looking as well. But I'm going to go with another later western. I'm probably going to go with Unforgiven, which almost feels like the ultimate revisionist western because it's one of the western stars making his own version of it, and how he's trying the western to kill the western.
Yeah.
With Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one, but it was really good.
Yep.
Because that came out like 92, I think.
Yep.
I don't know if I've seen it since 92 or 93.
Yeah, good movie.
Okay, I went with the route of, this was kind of a ragtag group of troublemakers with a hot-headed leader, and I went with a more fun movie from, I think it was from the early 90s, and that movie would be Young Guns. Because it really reminded me of that, because Emilio Estevez would be kind of the Jeff Bridges role in this, because he's kind of the leader of this gang, and he's very hot-headed and full of himself. I mean, he likes that he's notorious. He's got the line, "I'll make you famous." He's so full of himself. He's like, if you get robbed by me, you're going to be famous for being robbed by me. He plays
Billy the Kid, right?
Yes. And so, and there's, that's mostly the parallels there is that, and then also in Bad Company, they're on the run from the army because the army wants to recruit them, and they're trying to draft the Dodge. In this one, they actually become deputized at one point, kind of like Drew did in this movie, because at the beginning of the movie, have you seen Young Guns?
No.
Okay, it's really great. At the beginning of the movie, they're all living on a farm with this guy who took them in because they had nowhere to be, and he gets killed by some corporate dude from the town. And so they go after them, and they get deputized to go after these people. Well, then they eventually start I don't know how it progresses into them. I don't remember how it progresses into them just kind of becoming outlaws. And so then the law is after them eventually. So, there's several parallels with these. And there is a shootout in a house.
Nice.
and it's just a lot of fun. You got Emilio Estevez playing Billy the Kid. You got Lou Diamond Phillips, Dermot Mulroney, Charlie Sheen, Terrence Stamp is at the beginning. Just a great cast in there. And then you also have, do you remember I know you're not well versed in rap, but Regulators, Warren G and Nate Dogg.
Are they in it, or do they write a song for it?
No, the song Regulators, and I did not realize that. I didn't put this together a long time ago, even though I loved the song and I did like this movie. They literally lifted an entire portion of dialogue for the beginning of the Regulator song. So
nice.
And the thing is it really works for the rap. And I'm going, while I was watching the movie, I'm like, holy crap, they lifted it word for word from the movie.
Yeah, kind of like how I know with what Wu-Tang Clan would do with these. They were really big fans of kung fu movies.
Yeah, yes.
So then they would even for a while they had a label where they would just release these older kung fu movies under called Wu-Tang Presents or something.
Yeah, yes. So anyway, if you want a more fun outlaws on the run with a hot-headed leader,
or if you want a Chang Gang on the run with an amazing soundtrack,
then you go for Oh Brother Where Art Thou or Young Guns. So
I'm surprised neither of us took the obvious one of True Grit with Jeff Bridges as Rooster Cogburn.
I haven't seen that remake. I've only seen the John Wayne.
It's really good.
And that's what I was here to. I think at some point we need to do we need to start a show that's a remake show where we watch the original and the remake.
Maybe
compare and contrast.
It could make an interesting special.
Yeah. But now we're on to the
final segment where we find out what the heck we're going to do next time.
Let's go to the old spinaroo here.
Spinaroo. All
Okay.
genres,
70% or better. We have, now let's see if you can get this from the description. After a successful robbery leaves famed thief Lupin III and his partner Jiggin with nothing but a large amount of fake money, the so-called goat bills, he decides to track down the counterfeiter responsible and steal any other treasures he may find in the castle of Cagliostro, including the damsel in distress he finds imprisoned there.
Well, isn't this Lupin III?
It is Lupin III, the castle of Cagliostro. 1979 animated film.
If I remember, this was like super, super early Miyazaki.
Well, let me see, where is it? Yes, it is Miyazaki. So this should be good.
Nice.
And this is on Netflix. It's got 94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Neat.
So, yeah. So check out Lupin III, the Castle of Cagliostro, and we will talk about that on our next show.
All right. I haven't seen that much Miyazaki. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll be really interested to see this one. So
until then,
I'll make you famous.
Yes, you'll make me famous, and
maybe one day this podcast will make us famous.
I doubt it, but we'll have a good time anyway.
Indeed.